Let's upcycle a plain pencil skirt to a cute mini with a slit in the front. Ooh la la! With the technique I'm showing you, you can create a slit wherever you want to. You don't need a seam to do that. Hi, I'm Jenny, a trained fashion designer and tailor. If you're new to my channel, it's all about sewing. From sewing clothes to accessories and upcycling, you name it. So all you crazy sewing bees out there, hit the subscribe button and the bell. Let's get started! Measure the amount that you want to shorten your skirt, but don't forget to deduct the hem allowance of 2 centimeters. Otherwise, it will be even more of a mini skirt than anticipated. Make markings along the whole hemline. Cut along the line. If your pencil skirt has a back slit, open the stitch visible on the outside. Cut away the excess fabric from the back slit along the seam coming from the top. Take the fabric that you cut away from the hem and open any remaining stitches. The goal is to have the piece of fabric that you need for the slit. Draw a rectangle onto the piece of fabric that is 5 centimeters wide. Also draw a line through the middle of the rectangle. The rectangle has the following length: 2 centimeters for the hem allowance, then the length of the slit, plus 2 centimeters at the top. Make the corners at the top of the rectangle round. Cut it out. Iron a fusible interlining to the back side of the fabric. Finish the long edge with a zigzag stitch or an overlock stitch. If you had a back slit, also finish these seam allowances. Mark the middle of the fabric on the left side, so the one that has the interfacing on it. Also mark the end of the slit, which is 2 centimeters from the top. Decide where the slit will go and pin the slit fabric to the skirt, with the nice sides facing each other. In other words, the side with the interfacing is visible. The white chalk mark will be the slit in the end. Make sure that the edges at the bottom align. Place the slit under the sewing machine that the white chalk mark has a 0.5 centimeter distance to the needle. I do this by positioning the needle all the way to the left-hand side and then guiding the left side of the presser foot along the chalk line. Secure the stitches at the beginning by sewing 5 stitches forwards, backwards and forwards again. Sew along the chalk line evenly until you are 1.5 centimeters away from the top of the slit. Reduce your stitch length to 1.5 millimeters. Leave the needle in the fabric, lift the presser foot and slightly turn the skirt so that the sewing direction is towards the top of the slit. Slowly sew towards the end of the slit. Leave the needle in the fabric, turn the skirt, sew 1 stitch horizontally, leave the needle in the fabric again, turn the fabric again so that it sews in the same angle to the outside of the chalk marking again. When you reach the 0.5 centimeter point, turn the fabric, set the stitch length back to 2.5 and sew evenly towards the bottom. If you find the top part of the slit difficult, just mark the sewing line with the chalk. Illustrated here with a black pen. The pink line stands for the chalk line, so the middle of the slit. Cut along the chalk mark to the top of the slit. This next part is for the advanced sewers only. So if you are a beginner, skip to the ironing part. Fold the slit fabric towards the slit and sew on the slit fabric with a small distance to the seam. Now you should be sewing through the slit fabric as well as both seam allowances that are underneath it. Sew from the hem almost all the way to the top and secure the stitches at the beginning and at the end. Do the same on the other side of the slit. Pull the fabrics apart that you don't accidentally sew in a bulge. Iron the slit nicely. If you had a back slit, pin the edges together. Close this opening by starting well within the old seam and securing the stitches by sewing 5 stitches forwards, backwards and then forwards again. Do the same at the end of the seam. Finish the hem of the skirt with a zigzag or overlock stitch. On the inside of the skirt, make markings with tailor's chalk 4 cm from the hem. Place the hem onto these markings and iron the fold. Make sure that both sides of the slit have exactly the same length. Start at the left seam of the skirt. Sew the hem with a small distance from the inner edge. If you're a beginner at sewing, sew from the inside of the skirt so you can see where the edge is. When you reach the slit, sew all the way to the end of the fabric. Then sew backwards almost to the end of the slit fabric. Sew to the top of the slit, making sure to sew on the slit fabric on the sides. Again, if you find this difficult, simply draw a chalk line before you start sewing. Then you can sew along this chalk line to always have a reference point. Do as I say, not as I do. Secure the stitches at the end and cut the threads off. And then you're finished! Well done! Let me know if you've tried sewing a slit into one of your skirts and if you enjoyed this video. Also, make sure to check out more of my videos displayed now. Thank you for watching! See you next time!